So, welcome to the Unscripted Podcast, guys. My name is Karan Gugdani, and I'm your host. My guest on this episode is Ashwin Rajkumar. He's a sophomore majoring in aerospace engineering with a minor in humanitarian engineering. And Hi, Ashwin. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Karan. I'm excited to be here and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.
Would you like to add anything to your introduction? I didn't give you such a broad introduction, but anything else you want to talk about?
No, honestly, I think that was perfect. So you got my major, you got my minor. I think you did your research pretty well, so I'm super excited.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, Ashwin. Yeah. So, just lighting things up, I think, let's just start talking about some of the things which we were going to talk about today. I think why the first question, I probably would ask anyone, not even being from OSU, but any college, is why did you choose to go there? Was there a reason behind your major? Or what was, how did you think of going to Ohio State out of all the universities? Or like, yeah, possibly.
Yeah, so I got to be honest with you, OSU was not my first pick. I'm
Okay.
actually from Ohio, so I was always looking to go out of state. I got into a couple of out-of-state schools like Texas A&M, University of Cincinnati, and those were definitely on my list. But I think ultimately what brought me to OSU was the research factor. I think research was something that I've always wanted to do. I know it's extremely hard to get positions in research, and I'm currently experiencing that right now. But I think OSU overall does a really good job of like undergraduate research, making sure that their students are involved on campus. And I think that's one of the main factors that I also wanted to see. I think the other thing was more of just the community. I think OSU is a humongous campus and there's so many opportunities. And I think always having those things on the sidelines, if I ever get bored, if I have some free time, I know where to go. And that's what OSU can offer.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I know all of us have first choices, and then for me, it wasn't that I'm international, so I just had to choose out
Yeah,
of all the universities I got into. But I mean, if I'm in state, I would have definitely picked OSC. It's a great school, and it's
right.
definitely a good place to go. So starting a little bit, elaborating a little bit more on that. How do you think, like, when you first started off as a freshman, it had been so confusing. What do you think were like some involvements you made that made you in a comfortable position to achieve what you are achieving right now? I think the transition between school and college is such a big one, so you need to have that comfortable zone to do that. I think, what was yours like?
Yeah, so I didn't actually figure out my comfortable zone until my sophomore year.
Okay.
I was actually, my freshman year was completely online because of
Oh, yeah.
COVID. So I had an abnormal first year experience, I think to say the least. But one thing I really tried to do my freshman year was just making sure I had some friends to talk to. I went to as many like online programs as I could, especially in my scholars program for humanitarian engineering. I really tried to get to know people in my classes. I think the first year engineering classes do a really good job of like putting people in groups and making sure they're working together. And I think 1182 was my main, aspect of making sure I found some sort of friends or a friend group to talk to. But I think pivoting from freshman year to sophomore year was when I felt that college experience. I was like, okay, now I'm on campus. I get to interact with a couple of organizations. I recently joined like ISA, which was the Indian Student Association as well. So I got a chance to interact with some of their events as well. And I think that really brought me also closer to my culture, but also the community at OSU.
For sure, yeah, that definitely makes sense. Those involved. I think, yeah. First time I met you was ISA, so I've seen you so
Yeah.
many times around at ISA. So definitely great, the great moves to become comfortable in college for sure.
Right.
So what what would you say were the experiences, as an engineer coming into aerospace? I think probably one of the hardest majors, questionable. It's questionable, but like one of the hardest majors, I think, from my perspective, would be aerospace engineering. And like, what do you think has shaped you to do aerospace, or like, what have your like outcomes been? What have you? Why was it aerospace? Why wasn't it like some other engineering? Why wasn't it some other course?
Yeah. So, to be honest with you, aerospace wasn't my first choice either. My dad's actually
Oh,
a mechanical engineer, and then he pivoted into software in like, that time when computers started to become a big thing. That's
yeah.
when my dad first came to the US. So he started doing computer science. Um, I actually got a passion for aerospace engineering around middle school. And this was mainly, as any natural middle schooler is thinking, I looked at the price range. I was like, okay, I'm going to make so much money in here. I definitely want to do this. So I was looking at more of the price factor, but slowly as I started to do more research, I think aerospace engineering, especially the propulsion side, really fit my interests. I was huge into physics and chemistry a lot in high school. And I am obviously, like, I'm a math guy, so I think that really brought my interest and piqued my interest. But I think one of the main things was starting to watch like NASA launches on YouTube. I still watch those launches, especially like the Axiom one that just happened. um, I think that's when I finally realized that, like, hey, these rockets is what I want to be working on. These massive structures that people are flying in, this is what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. So I finally decided to pick aerospace engineering, and obviously I had like mechanical as my second.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. I think aerospace is a great major to have. My dad is actually in aerospace. I mean, he did aeronautical engineering, so I think it's a great major, but I'm not my interest.
Right.
100%, 100%. They're not there. But so, I mean, you spoke about. I think you told me that you had a minor in humanitarian engineering. What specifically interests you about, like, I mean, engineering is so broad, and you have
Yeah.
aerospace on one side, but you're taking humanitarian on other, which I would questionably say would be most different from each other,
Yeah.
possibly. So why was it that humanitarian engineering was something that you wanted to minor in out of everything else?
Yeah, so humanitarian engineering kind of leads back into my community service, like the community service side of me. I think in high school, starting my nonprofit organization and building that up really piqued my interests. And I'm hoping we get to talk about that a little towards the end.
Yeah,
That's
for
what like
sure.
the W.I.S.E initiative is in the back. Um, but I think that community service aspect of me like grew in high school. And when I was looking into some of the scholars programs at OSU, humanitarian engineering was one of them. There's a it's a very broad aspect, as you mentioned, um, and you're right, they couldn't be more far apart. But I think that aspect of humanitarian engineering puts me in a different perspective than other people, because not only am I able to like think about the community I'm building for, but I'm also thinking about the community around that specific person. I think it just adds an extra layer, especially during the development phase of like engineering and things like that. It allows you to not only think about that certain population, but expand your population even further. I actually just recently got to do a project, a service learning project that we got to build a rainwater system for 2 preschools in Guatemala. And that was happening during my freshman year, my spring semester. Um, that was the biggest thing that I was like, okay, yeah, humanitarian engineering is something I need to be doing, because hearing about the stories about like how they aren't getting water, they don't have access to water down there, and how to bring that water to them is very inspiring to me, because I think that, you know, making sure we get and develop those countries is something that I really want to be focusing on. And the way this kind of leads back into the aerospace engineering field is like the aspect of commercial vehicle or commercial spaceflight. I think making sure we get those accesses and those tools to third world countries to make sure they develop even further is something that is very important, and not only expands the US, but also globally as a world. I think we can all come together from that. So that's why, like, I hope like the two can kind of go together eventually. So we're gonna see where that takes me for now.
For sure, that makes so much sense, putting it into words, because I think that project sounded really cool. And I
Yeah,
think, what's the real purpose of engineering if not to help others, by doing
right.
something on the side? So
Exactly.
I think the path you're on is 100% right, and I feel like it's going to be a crazy journey, for sure.
Yeah.
Mixing that up is like something really interesting.
Right.
So, like you spoke about B-Wise, and I want to get into it now and talk about your initiative. We can see the big flyer behind you of
Yeah.
B-Wise. I've heard so much from people, and I've actually, I was scanning to your website a few days ago when I
Yeah.
first found out about you. It was it's I think it was sounded like such a cool initiative to me as a person, because I want to give you the chance to explain what you guys exactly do. So, like, after that, we can definitely talk more about it. But what do you like? I just want to know, what was the reason behind you starting BWise, and what is the idea of BWise as a company?
Right. So, um, my junior year of high school, I was actually in a program called Global Scholars, which is run by the Columbus Council on World Affairs. that experience kind of led me to the third year, which my final year was my junior year. I had to develop a project, which is that not only impacted my local community, but the community, internationally as well. Originally, I was thinking about like school lunches, how we can make them diverse and things like that, but that didn't really pique my interest. And it was actually the day before my project proposal was due. One of my friends was sitting behind me in study hall and was like, "Why don't you do engineering?" I was like, "Okay, I have to submit something. You know what? Here it is." And I submitted women in engineering as my topic. I didn't really know where I wanted to go with this. I had no plans. I literally did it the day of, so I procrastinated a little bit. So when I was sitting down and I was thinking a lot more about it, I originally started off with like a social media campaign. It was just making sure we educate the society around me about women engineers and how they're important to society and how they have limited opportunities, but we need to make sure they're getting more opportunities in the future. And then I started to take a deeper dive. I looked at our school education system. And I have to be honest, not a huge fan. I think there's so much improvements that can happen in our school education system. And I think that has to come from students. And I say this because a lot of our teachers are on the other end of it. I get that they went through the same process as us, but times have changed. I think it's time for the students to step in and be like, hey, these are the things where I lacked. Let's see where we can make some changes. So I started off in the high school aspect. High school, obviously, you have plenty of science and engineering courses you can take. Women can go into that, and like there's a lot of opportunities for them. Again, down to the middle school level, there's STEM academies. There's plenty of other things that they can get involved of. But the thing that I hit mainly on was the elementary school district. They are not allowed in the STEM academies. There's very limited science resources about like just general geography, taking them out to parks, zoos. Yeah, everybody does that. I want to see what we can do different. So I started the W.I.S.E initiative to help motivate elementary school girls into this science and engineering aspect by not only creating a community around them, but building a proprietary curriculum that makes sure they're retaining the knowledge that they're learning in science. So that's kind of the general gist of the
Yeah.
W.I.S.E initiative.
I know, yeah, for that definitely, that's something really, really interesting. I think women in STEM is something which is a lot focused on nowadays because we have so many men who are in STEM. I think that's,
Right.
I'm in business and I see an equal proportion right here. But when many of my friends who are in engineering, I see that difference, and there are many more men
Yeah.
than women in engineering. It's definitely a great initiative to support, I think, a lot of these women's dreams to, do STEM. I feel like a lot of times we get so misguided when we're in classes, the
Right.
education, like you explained, I'm a huge supporter of that. The education system needs to be changed. I've spoken about this many times before on
Yeah.
platforms. I'm from India, and the education system is even worse over there. You
Yeah.
can understand how bad it would be if US is so bad. So like you can understand that,
Right.
it's another level of bad. And you don't exactly learn anything. All you have to do is remember stuff, and then you're like spitting it out.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's no point in doing that. If you learn, you learn forever. If you spit out, it's for
Right.
like 2 days.
Right.
So like I think that I agree with the fact that you say that. And I think the involvements, like clubs and like your organization too, if these clubs actually take these interesting topics to these people, I think it'll make a lot of impact. So I feel like what you're doing right now is such a good thing. And honestly,
Thank you.
I think that was the most interesting thing when I found out about your initiative. I was like, this is something which I don't see a lot of people do. People support women in STEM. They're like, yeah, I support women in STEM, but they don't take an
Right.
initiative for it. But like you actually did take an initiative. You've been running it for the last 3 years, I think, around 3 years.
Yeah. 3 years.
I mean, that's insane. That's something I'm really applaud you for, and I respect you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. So talking a little bit about B-Wise, do you think, yeah, it's been a long journey, 3 years, definitely, but do you think there's been any person in this journey who's been like a great support to your initiative? I mean, it could be everyone in the part of process, anyone a little more than, those people. So anyone at all, you think?
Yeah, so obviously, like my entire leadership team, Isha Sharma, Ashley Tarrant, who we just pulled from Dublin. There's several other people who have worked on our projects. I think the biggest person I have to say, and that was like kind of our adult supporter, was the people at YMCA, especially like one of our partners called Y Club. So it's an after-school daycare program, and this woman named Holly Napier was our main contact for the last 3 years. Um, we have a program called My Kid that sends 2 high school volunteers into each of these elementary schools that we're a part of that we've partnered with. And Holly Napier has done a fabulous job, like contacting us if there's a problem, making sure our budget's coming in on time. There's a lot of logistics that we handle and making sure we're planned on. Obviously, like my leadership team does majority of that, but I think when it comes down to the wire, it ultimately requires our partners to step in and be like, hey, this is what we can do for you, and let's see how we can work this out. And I think Holly Napier was our biggest impact on that. Y Club was actually one of our first partners. We were our first year, we were scrambling to find people. We didn't want to just settle for like one elementary school and just kind of like, half bake it and move on. We wanted to make sure this was self-sustaining, or at least, can run for a couple of years. And I think our first 2 years was definitely like, we had to be very hands-on. We're always involved. And I think and my leadership team were all very involved. But I think this year was our first year. And I actually made a LinkedIn post about this, how we were self-sufficient. The idea of self-sufficiency. We actually created student chapters at each of these high schools, put 4 people in charge of about, give or take, 50 to 75 volunteers at each of these high schools to go out and do these projects with the elementary schools. So I think this is the first year that our My Wise Kid program, just no one on the leadership was touching, no one at Y Club was touching. It was just strictly these phenomenal women who were running it at the high school level and just making sure that it all ran smoothly. So I think that was probably our biggest success to date, to be honest with you, because we know that, even if we have to step away, this is going to run for the next, couple of years at least.
100%. Hard work, I think, lays the background to success.
Yeah.
If you put in hard work for the last 3 years, and I can only imagine how hard it would have been to put in those efforts and those hours. It's definitely very hard. People don't see that on the outside often,
Right.
But like I know it's a lot. It's a lot of time, and I think that's phenomenal. It's definitely going to continue. I think this trend is going to go up for sure. And yeah, that's really, really good how you guys started off. I think that was a great. I think that makes a great business case study to how you guys started off, because you guys started with making your own opportunity. Like you found someone and one person believed in you, and then you guys are like out here, like making it big now. So it's great. It's great to see that. I saw that you guys run a podcast series too, right? In B-Wise.
Yeah. So we actually started an IGTV series on Instagram called Wise Hours that was specifically targeted towards like high school girls, college students. And we were interviewing a lot of college students that have just either graduated or about to graduate. We actually pivoted a little bit after getting our Cohatch Give Scholarship. So that's Cohatch is an office space, and they actually have a podcast room there. We knew we wanted to target our larger consumer base, which is harnessing more of that college factor, or those college participants that are coming in as mentors or participants for us. But then we also wanted to make sure that adults knew about us, right? So we're spending so much time with these kids, but parents just kind of come in, pick their kid up, and they have no idea what's going on. We wanted to make sure that we were educating the adults and the college students as well, saying like, hey, this is the opportunities that we're providing. Do you mind assisting us? Or at least just making sure you send our kids our way. And that podcast is called, sorry, I'm blanking.
No, all good.
It is called Broken Barriers. I'm so sorry. We've actually just filmed 2 episodes, so it's fairly new.
It's pretty cool.
But the reason for this Broken Barriers episodes were to make sure that they were as raw as possible. The women that are coming on, if they are angry, then I want them to be angry. I want them to share their story to make sure that, the society around them knows that the struggles that they're going with is not in vain, and they're making excellent changes and amazing things, and they're doing amazing things. And we want to make sure that, their story is heard from a bunch of people and millions of people all over the place.
For sure, yeah, 100%. That's pretty cool. I think I saw this and I was like, yeah, I'm calling you for a podcast, and you have one.
Yeah.
So that was something, and we are 2 episodes down too. So I think we are running at the same pace. Yeah, that's pretty cool, definitely. So, I heard that you guys received some award for B-Wise, if that was a little spoken about. Any
Yeah, so
accomplishments or awards you guys like? Yeah, go for it.
So we didn't actually receive like any physical awards, but we have been invited to a couple of places, like the International Awards Ceremony for the Columbus Council on World Affairs. There we actually gave a presentation on, that was our first presentation as the B.Y.S initiative, just being like, hey, we're going to start this into a nonprofit. I actually gave that presentation my junior year as well. And I think, to say the least, that was probably the most nerve-wracking experience I've ever had. There were so many company sponsors there, people from PNC Bank to Honda, to CAS, so many people. And I think, sharing my story, it was a privilege there. I think a lot of people there kind of gave me the energy I needed to keep going. I love feeding off of people's energy. I think if they're motivated, it also makes me motivated as well. And making sure that this kept going was one of the biggest things I wanted to do. I think something that I've always heard from a YouTube person that I watched, Elliot Choi, he says that he never likes to give up opportunities, and I think he put it a fantastic way, that like you should take advantage of every opportunity. I think that's what we really try to do at the B.Y.S initiative, that we want to not only take advantage of those opportunities, but making sure we're giving those opportunities out as well. Creating multiple different programs for people to be a part of. If there's something that they wanted to do with us, approach us. We'll never say no to you. And I think giving them that platform to expand their horizons was what we really tried to do.
So that's definitely a great thing to do. That's great. I think those experiences which you get, right? This is like a big long journey, and that
Yeah,
one experience which you think was the hardest thing, but you're going to get those more, and it's going to happen
right.
soon. I'm pretty sure of this. That you're going to have more of these soon. But I think you're on the right path, and everyone feels nervous. Every time I come out front here to do podcast, I'm like, am I going to do well today? Like,
Yeah.
am I going to be talking well, or is it going to
Right.
be bad? But I think you slowly gain that confidence. Like, first episode was really nerve-wracking, but now into the third one, I'm like, okay, it's normal. Like, I'm getting used to
Yeah.
it. I'm definitely going to be better 10 episodes down, but it's I think it's
Right.
how it is. You get used to stuff.
Exactly.
So for sure, yeah. Now, I mean, I really, really appreciate, what you're doing with B.Y.S, and I
Thank you.
think it's a great initiative. I hope people out there who really want to help people in STEM to get
Yeah.
into that thing. I don't know what expertise I could be on that side, because I haven't done STEM and more into the business side. But if you ever need my help, I'm always ready and willing to help, because I really
Of
believe in this
course.
initiative, and
Thank you
I
so
think
much.
I think you guys are definitely going to aim. You're definitely aiming for the stars, and you're on the right track for it.
Thank
So
you. I
so
appreciate
thank
that.
you for talking about B.Y.S. I think it was amazing to talk to you about.
Thank you.
Yeah. So getting a little back into your journey, about
Yeah.
things that I think I just wanted to add B.Y.S in the middle, because I think B.Y.S was something really, really interesting. We stood out of all those things you told me,
Yeah.
but a little bit more. Were there like any serious hurdles you had to pass, not only for B.Y.S, it could be for B.Y.S, but it could be for anything in your life, or anything which you had to pass, and then like anyone, like it can be like an achievement, it could be a failure, but like it taught you so much more than what
Yeah.
you want to do. So like anything like that in your life.
So yeah, no, as I was saying, like I wanted to be a little bit personal on this question.
Yeah.
And something that I actually got my freshman year of high school was Crohn's disease. Obviously, like lost a lot of my hair. My skin was a little bit rough. It wasn't in the best state, and I had to physically and mentally build a sort of a thicker skin, as you would call it.
Mm.
I did get I want to say like bullied just a tiny bit, but obviously like those words have never really phased me. So I think a lot of the things I kind of just brushed off. I was like, okay, it's fine. I mean, they're kids, they're teenagers. I was like that too. So through this experience, it taught me a lot. I had a lot of conversations with my parents of like, okay, what if this didn't happen to me? Would I have been in a different state? Like, where would I have been? And I think a lot of the things that they bring back to is just like, this experience taught me how to be a better person. I think it really gained my confidence, boosted my confidence, gave me like a drive, per se, to keep on going no matter what. Um, and I think this tied both back into my studies as well as the B.Y.S initiative pretty well, because obviously with my studies, I was very determined to get into aerospace engineering. I wanted to get into aerospace engineering for the longest time. So making sure I kept my grades up, my GPA was good, was something I really valued. I was always hardworking in high school. Um, but then when it targets towards like the B-Wise initiative a little bit, it's more of just like, we always had people in the beginning that I presented to that said, oh, this will never work. Too many people are doing this. It's so common, right? Like there's a lot of STEM activities out there. But I think even after all of that, it proved me to like, it gave me the confidence to be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to keep on pushing. We're going to see where this ends up. I'm not going to just listen to one person, just be like, hey, they said no, so it's not going to work. Um, and I think this honestly goes back to every single business person. I think a lot of people felt like the same journey of like, or have the same kind of thicker skin per se to, keep on pushing. And that's what a lot of businesses grow. I watch Shark Tank quite a bit, and I've seen this happen a lot for a lot of people. So I think, that I don't want to categorize it as a failure, but it was definitely a learning experience for me.
Oh, definitely 100% a great learning experience. I think you got a lot out of it. I'm sorry that, people, I know kids can be vulnerable at that age, and
Yeah,
it happens a lot in high school that people bully people for their appearance.
yeah,
And honestly, it all changes. I think once you come to college, you're a different person, you're different people.
right.
Everyone respects, it's such a big transition. Everyone respects you for who you are versus
Exactly.
no one actually, people making fun of you. It's just amazing. I think the transition, but
Right.
I really like that you had, I mean, experiences build so much, and I feel like this is a great experience, and I think you've built the best out of it. So
Yeah.
that's so great. And okay, so going a little bit into, the funnier parts of a little bit more like the fun parts of the podcast always. I
Yeah.
always keep this towards the end, this is like the normal part. What
Of
is
course.
like any funny stories that you're insanely known for, like probably from B.Y.S or probably from any of your friends, or
Yeah.
what would they say?
So I actually got we had something called senior superlatives in high school,
Yeah.
where they voted for people for like best dressed, most likely to like be late to graduation, things like that. Um, and while I don't necessarily look like that right now, but I did actually win best dressed in my high school. I thought this was always kind of funny because a lot of the things or the places that I would shop at are like things like Express, H&M. And
Yeah.
while my bank account, my parents' bank account didn't look so fantastic after shopping in those areas, I think it really paid off after I got that award. I'm a huge awards person, so I think the thousands of dollars I gave to Express and H&M, it paid off with that award. But yeah, so I think that's probably one of the biggest things like people will talk about, and I actually really enjoy dressing up. It's probably one of my biggest things, so I appreciate that.
So I think dressing up matters. It makes, I think the first impression people look at is how you're dressed, and that makes a huge
Exactly.
impact on anyone around you. So yeah, that not the worst investment, I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Is there like, okay, going to the next question, is there like something people often like misunderstand about you, or like that you would like to correct? Like, people often think something wrong about you, but you think you would correct it.
I've never really came across this problem as much.
Yeah,
I
makes
think I
sense.
like to be very transparent with people, and I think it gives me the opportunity to get to know them as well pretty well. But I think on the other end of that coin, like people are tend to be self-conscious, and that's not a bad trait to have. Like I think it's very prevalent in this society to be self-conscious about yourself, and there's always things that you want to keep to yourself, and that's fine. But I think the advice I would give to those people is just kind of be yourself. I think if people want to get to know you and be around you, they're obviously gonna, approach you no matter how your personality is and things like that. So I think just vibing and keep making sure you're staying true to yourself is something that's very important.
For sure, that 100%. That definitely makes sense. I think people, often think about how their appearance looks and everything.
Yeah.
But I think experiences in life make that different, and college definitely changes that perspective out of a lot of people.
Right.
So for sure. Oh, I have a tricky question for you.
Yeah.
So the question is, let's say I give you $100 million to own one
Yeah.
business firm. It could be B-Wise too. You already have that, but like, let's say you have a different firm, not B-Wise. It could be any other firm.
Yeah.
Which firm would you pick and why? And is there a reason behind why you would pick that firm?
That's a very good question. See, part of me wants to go the cliche way and say SpaceX because I'm an aerospace engineer. And I've been, a very big fan of SpaceX and their accomplishments for the longest time. Um, but I think honestly, I would go for like some consulting company, something like Deloitte. I think it's going to be an interesting aspect because I think as a consultant, you have, plenty of opportunities and you have multiple different people who are experienced in different things. So I think being that third party resource for people would, not only build your brand and your business, but also give people a chance to, go into these different companies and give people different opportunities. So I think consulting companies is not a bad move nowadays. I think it's definitely a different experience. So I would try to do something for that.
Yeah, definitely not the worst move. I think
Yeah,
consulting companies are a good source of income too. So
right.
it'll definitely benefit two ways. You definitely learn a lot out of it too. So
Right.
great answer. Who's like one person you think who's like inspired you to achieve your goals?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back to my roots from like elementary school, middle school. I'm gonna say Iron Man. I know that's very, very childish, but I think, Iron Man, as much as it kind of feels weird saying that, is because I think he was one of the first people that I kind of looked up to. It was like, I think Marvel and, in general, like all these TV show characters do a very nice job of portraying like a life that you want to live. But I think what I kind of gained out of Iron Man was like he's just an average guy. You know what I mean? Like he didn't do anything super special. It's the fact that he had the knowledge and the know-how to make a life for himself and build a better life for himself. So I think, engineering those aspects is what I want to be doing. So I would have to go with Iron Man. Yeah.
For sure, yeah, that's definitely a great answer. It's not childish at all. I think
Yeah.
Iron Man would be one of the answers. Someone asked me, I might actually not thought of it. I don't know who I would pick, but I think Iron Man
Yeah.
is a great answer because he definitely did build his life up on his own steps. I think that's a pretty cool answer.
Right.
So, what are like? I'm not sure if you're too much into books. We can avoid the question otherwise. But like, what are three books like you think 2 or 3 books you would recommend to the audience over here, which you've read and you think has like been a great impact to your life?
Yeah. Not a huge fan into books. I got to be honest with
Yeah.
you. I spend a lot of time reading textbooks as an aerospace engineering major, so I think that's about where my reading stops. However, on the other side of that coin, I think podcasts is where I kind of, learn a lot of my information, which is heavily why I wanted to be on here today. So I'm super excited for this. But one podcast that I listen to a lot, and I guess this is kind of like the entrepreneurial mindset that I have, is How I Built This by Guy Raz. It's an NPR podcast, and he talks a lot about the stories of how like companies developed, how companies were built. And actually, I would love to share this. Is like one thing that I just watched was or listened to was the CEO of Boom Chicken Pop. It's a kettle corn company. And this goes back to, again, motivating women to expand their horizons and things like that. And one of the things that this person mentioned, or like the CEO was talking about, was the fact that, when she was first developing her company, she was looking for different, kettle corn names, as ironic as that sounds. And as any normal business person would do, she went to the grocery store aisle and just looked around. And she, took a little stroll down, the kettle corn aisle, the regular popcorn aisle, of just like looking at different names, and what all of these names meant to her. And something she realized fairly quickly, actually, was that they're all based on males. It's very male dominant, even in the popcorn field, as much as anything. And we were looking around at this, and I was listening to her comment. And one thing she said was that since she saw that, she was with her husband, and she turned around to her husband and said, "Where are all the popcorn women?" Right. And I think that was, and when you're listening to that episode, there's actually a lot of cheers. A lot of people are super excited to hear that.
Yeah.
And you can see the kind of motivation and the empowerment that she gives to people. And I think something like that really inspires me to do that as well. And like, you know what I mean? Like, I want to make sure that I'm empowering the next generation. So not only am I giving other people opportunities, but I'm also making sure that I'm, trying to make sure that they go out and develop these kind of empowerment factors on their own. So they start social enterprises. If they want to start a business, they go do that. I want to make sure that people know that they can do anything they want to do.
Yep, definitely. That's definitely interesting. I think I should go and hop onto that podcast. I'm huge into podcasts, and that's the reason I
Yeah.
started one of my own. I wanted to I took like impacts from different podcasts to see what I could make the best outcome of. So
Right.
the reason I wanted to start this. But I think that's a great podcast. I think after this episode, I'm going to be listening to that for sure. I'm like, I can skip schoolwork for podcasts. That's how interested I am in them. So
Yeah.
for sure.
10 out of 10. I definitely recommend it.
100%. And that sounds like a great story. I think, yeah, I think I've seen that in the market. Now when you spoke about it, I realized that most of the things are in that base. So I think that's pretty cool. What are like, I guess you would watch a lot of movies. I think movies are something which a lot of people watch. So what are 3 movies you would recommend to my audience?
I would say Pursuit of Happiness is a very big one. And I'm going to pick a lot of Will Smith movies because I think he sends a very good message out. So Pursuit of Happiness is one thing that I watched when I was, my dad was always a big fan of that movie, and I was listening to him, and I went and watched it. I think that movie talks a lot about how communities are, so forgotten. Just making sure you forget about the forgotten people, but that's not exactly what it should be like. I think the forgotten people deserve to be remembered as well. I actually wrote my college essay on the idea of legacy. What did I want to leave behind on the world? So I think that movie kind of changed my impressions of obviously, like, you want to build a family and leave them behind, make sure they have a good life. But I think for me, after watching that movie, it went so far beyond that. It's not only impacting your family, but also making sure you impact the society around you. So I think that was one of my biggest movies that changed my perspective. Obviously, we have the Iron Man series, any Marvel comics. I think that puts a sense of creative imagination towards you, and it allows you to grow and develop that creative mindset. And I think to be an engineer, to be an entrepreneurial business, social enterprise, anything like that, take a doctor, for example. I think it all requires a sense of creativity, and any Marvel comics or Marvel or anything like that is definitely something that harnesses that very well, and making sure their viewers expand on their creative side is very sweet and empowering as well. Don't really have a third one as of right now. Oh, actually, I do. Hidden Figures. I think that was the other movie. I actually quoted this in my presentation that I did at the International Awards ceremony. But there was a line that she talks about was that every time we get ahead, they move the finish line. Is very empowering. I think that idea of the finish line is something I've been chasing for quite a while. But I think the W.I.S.E initiative is really trying to make sure that we pull that finish line closer to people. If they want to accomplish a goal, we're going to make sure that finish line is 2 blocks down the road. They just need to work hard to get there. So I think that was probably the other movie I would recommend.
Yeah, sure. Pretty cool movies, pretty cool choices out there. I watched one of them, but I think I should start watching more movies. I think college just don't get the time to start watching.
Yeah, I agree.
With them, yeah. So before, this is like, thank you, Ashwin, for being here. Of course, before we wrap up, I have a final question. This is called the role reversal place, where instead of me asking you questions, you can ask me anything you want to know about me, or anything about Unscripted, or anything at all. Like I can try to answer the best way. So go for it if you have anything at all.
Yeah, so I just want to know, like, what made you, obviously, like, you've heard my spiel, but I'm a huge factor of empowerment and things like that. So tell me, like, why did you want to start this podcast? What did you want your viewers to get out of it?
So, I mean, for me as a person, I've always wanted to create new things and create something meaningful, if that makes sense. I actually, when I was back home in India, I started a few startups when I was younger, like you of course, not too much into the social side, of course, more into the side of like doing something for startups. I started these startups and I saw the impact they make, how organizations make impact on people. But the reason why I started Unscripted podcast, or why Unscripted, the name just came because I like the name. and
Yeah.
everything. I was like unscripted. It was like, it sounded perfect in my mind. I was like, yeah, I want this podcast name. And that's why I took that name as to be the podcast name. But why I started this podcast was mainly only because I could learn as a person. I feel
Yeah.
like what I understood, I was what I just want to say that there's TED talk, and someone speaks about grit. If you know what grit is, how you
Yeah.
empower growth mindset, how you empower things. I feel like if you don't have a growth mindset, then there is no aim in life.
Right.
And if you don't learn every single day, then what is the purpose you serve?
Yeah.
But the reason I started this podcast personally is because I don't care if 2 people view the podcast or like
Right.
10 people view the podcast. But even if I impact off it, that's it matters to me. Because
Yeah.
every day I'm learning new things. I think I didn't know so much about aeronautics. I didn't know so much about I learned so much about your initiative today. And I
Yeah.
think that's really cool because who knows, it might help me somewhere forward in my life.
Of
And
course.
the same were from the people who were in the last 2 episodes. And I think it's going to be I'm trying to put out one episode every week. It's very hard. I know it takes a
Yeah.
lot of my time off, with especially being in college, taking a lot of stuff up. I think it
Yeah.
takes a lot of time, but I'm dedicated to do it because I want to learn something new every week. I want to
Right.
You develop so much. And I've interviewed people from 3 different backgrounds till now, all like all the people I've interviewed till now, all of you guys, different
Right.
backgrounds. One is First episode was finance, second episode was um second episode was engineering,
Yeah.
CSE, and no, no, not CSE, pre-med. Second episode pre-med. I'm doing CSE next episode, but we have one
Yeah.
now with you with aeronautical engineering. We're talking to 3 different fields, and we're talking about what 3 organizations you guys have created, what you've done as people, and I think that's crazy cool. So like that's the reason I started
Yeah.
Unscripted.
I actually think that's a great way to put it. Like that growth mindset is something people, really need to start developing. And I think you put that in a really great way. Nice job. That's
The
really
thing
exciting to
is,
hear.
people forget why you learn. And I
Yeah.
did myself. I'll tell you this. When I was in high school, I forgot why I learned. But when I came to college, I'm like, no, I'm here to learn. If it's
Yeah.
not from books, I will learn from people. And I'm telling you this as a person.
Uh,
Approach
yeah.
people at O.S.E, approach people at any college. They're so ready and
Right.
so willing to talk to you. And I've had this, at least in business, we have this thing called coffee chats. We have coffee chats every week.
Yeah.
I try to do 5, 6 every week. It takes 30 minutes. But like
Right.
I think I learned so much out of them. And I feel like you should just go for that approach. And that's growth
Yeah.
mindset.
Wow, that's a really great way to put that. I like that.
For sure. So, Ashwin, this is obviously, thank you for asking me. That was a great question. I think, no one asked me a question till now. So that was amazing. I felt like answering that question served why I started the podcast. I sometimes have to
Yeah.
remind myself why I started it. So, definitely reminds me of what was the reason behind. I was planning it for the last 1 year. I just didn't know
Yeah.
when was the right time. And I was like, there's no right time. You have to start it when you have to. And I'm like, this
Yeah.
is
Of course.
so
Just gotta step
definitely,
into it. That's good.
great. Yeah, for sure. So I think I had I had a really good conversation with you today, and I learned a lot out of it. I'm taking away really good key takeaways from this. I feel like a lot of people out there who want to know about aeronautical or even about B-Wise can
Yeah.
definitely, if you want to know more about B-Wise, definitely reach out to Ashwin. If you have anything, text me and I'll send you Ashwin's contacts. He'll definitely be willing to help you. Obviously, go to the website. The website's everywhere, and the big organizations. So, you're definitely going to hit them up. I think you guys are doing great thing, and I wish you best of luck for whatever your future endeavors are. I hope that one day, one day I would be looking back and I'll be like, okay, BY is like this big organization. And I'm like, okay, I interviewed the CEO and the founder of
Yeah.
BY. It's like, it was Ashwin, who is my podcast.
Uh,
I hope that happens one day. That would
of
definitely
course.
make me, feel really happy. And I hope you have great,
Yeah.
I hope you have a great journey ahead.
Awesome.
So
Thank you so much. I'm actually really excited to see where this podcast goes to. So, best of luck. I think these first couple of episodes that I've listened to so far, you're on par with the how I built this. So you're getting there. Nice job. No, I'm really excited to see what you guys are doing, and the stuff you've done is really empowering as well. So nice job.
for sure. Thank you so much for those kind
Yeah,
words, Ashwin. And I look forward to seeing you.
of course. You too.